The story begins with a world where countless species live among humans, among which dragons are said to be at the top of the food chain. Monsters, as well as humans, often seek suitable places to live. A slime couple is currently looking for a shelter to breed, and they approach an elf named Diria to buy a house. Diria, a demon lord with extensive skills as an architect and real estate agent, shows them a cave deep in the woods to help them avoid humans. The slime couple looks inside and finds it quite appealing for their requirements. They also mention that their old home was featured in a magazine, which led to many humans raiding their residence, forcing them to leave. Seeing their urgency, Diria tells them that this cave has a camouflage spell on it for 1 year. If they purchase it now, they will get it for free. After closing the deal, Diria leaves. The scene shifts and we are introduced to a scrawny red dragon named Letty, a young dragon who gets scolded by his father for letting a dragon egg be stolen by a single adventurer. Letty explains that he was taking a nap to recover his energy when, out of nowhere, an adventurer and a cat arrived and took the egg. Letty tried to get it back, but fearing that they would harm him, he returned home. Seeing how ignorant Letty is, his father disowns him and tells him never to return. After getting disowned, Letty looks at his ID card and realizes how low his stats are, making him discouraged about surviving in the wild. He decides to find a house as a safer option to stay away from adventurers. Seeking help, he goes to Zoloto Mine, the dwarves' territory, to ask for assistance in building a house. However, dwarves are known for their greed, and they accuse Letty of stealing, capturing him. Letty fears that his body will be turned into luxury weapons, but manages to escape the dwarves. On his way, he encounters the same adventurers who took the egg and engages in a fight. Fortunately, the dwarves intervene, giving Letty a chance to escape. After running for hours, Letty manages to get away from them and stumbles upon a group of harpies in the forest. He shares his story with them, and the harpies offer Letty a place to stay in their nest, as their children move out once they learn to fly. Letty is thrilled by the offer, but since he doesn't know how to fly, he climbs trees to reach the nest. After reaching the top, the harpies teach Letty how to fly, although he struggles. Despite his efforts, Letty fails to reach the nest, leading to laughter from the harpies and embarrassment for Letty. The harpies suggest that Letty go to the valley beyond, where goblins reside, and assures him that they will help him in some way. Letty goes to the valley but initially gets trapped by the goblins, who intend to slaughter him for his meat. However, Letty mentions the harpies, which changes the goblins' attitude, and they release him. After sharing his story with the goblins, they advise Letty to continue his search without losing hope. Letty continues his search and arrives at the residence of Sakurajan, who agrees to let Letty stay in his home, but it's deep underwater. Letty agrees at first but realizes he can't swim, so he declines the offer, disappointing Sakurajan. Sakurajan advises Letty to head east to the Yggdrasil tree and find the architect named Diria, who helped him find his home. Letty thanks him for the information and departs. While traveling, Letty enters the forest and asks the gnomes for directions. Upon reaching his destination, Letty encounters the hero's team, who initially threaten him. However, a gray-haired elf arrives and swiftly deals with the hero's team. Letty faints after witnessing the elf's ruthlessness. When he regains consciousness, he asks the elf about his purpose, and they introduce themselves. The elf mentions that he is looking for a guy named Diria to help him find a house. The elf reveals that the person he is searching for is standing right in front of him, and after a moment, Letty asks him to find him a house, to which the elf agrees. He inquires whether Letty wants to rent a place or construct it, also providing his card. While looking at the card, Letty realizes that the elf is also the demon lord but mistakenly assumes him to be the demon lord of real estate. Diria asks Letty about his ideal home and the type of establishment he needs. After describing his ideal residence, Diria takes Letty to a dungeon to find a suitable home. They visit the Temple of Fall through a teleportation spell, where Letty encounters numerous traps and challenges. After falling into all the traps, Letty finally reaches the bottom and requests a break. During their rest, Letty accidentally falls into the ocean, but Diria teleports him back. After a brief rest, Diria instructs Letty to return to the first floor to review the rooms. While climbing, a couple of hunters arrive and attempt to attack Letty for gold and other items. Diria intervenes, using a single spell to eliminate the hunters. Impressed, Diria invites Letty to sign the papers if he likes the house, but Letty rejects it, finding the house unsuitable. A few days later, Letty resumes his journey to search for a house. Diria suggests a place where Letty could live peacefully, and Letty eagerly asks for Diria to show it to him. Upon arrival, Diria reveals that it's a haunted mansion and persuades Letty to spend the night to become accustomed to it. Not knowing what to do, Letty agrees and stays the night. At midnight, Letty sees a mysterious figure behind a photo, startling him. He goes outside to find Diria, but upon closing the door, he becomes trapped in an infinite trance, surrounded by a hallway filled with blood and skulls. Letty attempts to find Diria, but the room is pitch black. A mysterious figure provides him with a flashlight, shifting the perspective to a first-person view, intensifying Letty's fear. Letty runs to find Diria but encounters an undead figure at the end of the hallway and faints. After some hours, Letty regains consciousness and learns that Diria was welcoming him to his new home. Surprising Letty, Diria introduces Letty to the owner, Mr. Samuel, and mentions that Letty can have all the servants and ghouls in the mansion if he buys the property now. Considering the eerie atmosphere, Letty declines the offer to avoid a heart attack. When they leave, Letty apologizes to Samuel for not accepting his offer and continues his search. In the forest, Diria plans to show Letty a new house but first returns the bed they used the previous night. They visit the cavern of Abuela, where the Grey sisters, skilled in construction and selling, show Letty unique artifacts and objects for his new home. They present a poetic painting to Letty which questions him about an object. If Letty fails to answer, embarrassing stories will be revealed. Unexpectedly, Letty finds a fireplace for his house and agrees to build a new home for it. Diria offers to cover the construction cost and inquires about Letty's investment. Letty admits to having no money except for his baby tooth, which turns out to be worthless. However, Diria assures him that the financial situation will resolve itself. Diria creates a blueprint for the house and gathers gnomes and ogres to begin construction. Letty assists the gnomes in fireproofing the lumber but receives a beating for his inaccurate brushstrokes and painting coating. After helping Diria mix concrete and getting it all over his face when sneezing, Letty feels pitiful but is reassured by Diria that they will complete the project together. After countless efforts, the house is finally complete, and Letty expresses gratitude to all the workers for their help. There, Diria mentions that they only need to wait for the humans to show up to cover the construction cost with their drops. Saying this, Diria leaves. That night, the hero's team enters the palace and attempts to rob Letty's house. However, the workers he hired earlier stop them and take their loot. Before leaving, the hero gives Letty a new name, Flame Dragon Lord. After a few days, Letty receives a visit from two Corpicers who seek refuge from the hero's team. Letty, not knowing their numbers, agrees to let them stay in his palace. As he opens the door, a ton of monsters arrive and ask for refuge as well. They mention that the hero's team destroyed their homes after raiding the place. Seeing their situation, Letty agrees to let them stay. After 4 weeks of constant partying and monster hunting, Letty becomes fed up and sends a message to Diria that he is leaving home, so not to look for him. Diria rushes to Letty to see what is going on. Letty tells him the whole story and asks him to find a new place with peace and quiet. Diria agrees to help him and they continue their journey to find the perfect place. Diria also mentions that he sold the house to the monsters at a good rate. They go to the tundra to buy a new house, and Diria gives Letty a new set of clothes that make him resemble a furball. He gives Letty a shovel and tells him to make a new house with snow. After following the instructions given by the book, Letty successfully builds a new home. Seeing that Letty has a new home, Diria tells Letty that he has to stay in this igloo for 3 days. If he likes it, he will make it his permanent home. After Diria leaves, Letty sets off to find food for himself. He tries to hunt deer and rabbits, but they pick on him, turning him into a snowman multiple times. While Letty goes back home empty-handed, he gets lost in the snowstorm and finds an egg. He wishes to eat the egg but decides not to after realizing that his mother might be worried. After going 1 day in the snow without food, Letty starts having constant hallucinations about eating the egg. Letty takes care of the egg until his parents arrive. While he is doing that, the snow starts to melt, and he drifts into the ocean along with the egg. He spends another day in the snow, but unfortunately a whale arrives and eats him. As he wakes up, he is introduced to a guy named Davy Jonas. Davy gives him a tour of the place and tells him that this is his home. They have some tea and eat dinner. After the tour ends, Davy asks Letty what he is doing here in the first place. Letty tells him the whole story and Davy tells him to stay the night. The next morning, Letty asks Davy if he wants to go outside and look for his dream home. Davy ties him to a launch pad and gets him a barrel of black pepper. He grabs it and gets shot through the whale's blowhole. Letty successfully gets outside from the whale and protects the egg. After a few moments, Letty sees a cute seal on the ice slab and tries to eat it, but out of modesty and humanity, he rejects the offer. Turns out, Diria can shapeshift and turn himself into a seal by using this coat. He reveals himself and takes them to the shore. After getting to the shore, Daria mentions that he has been watching him from a distance and kept an eye on them to keep him safe. After that, they go to Letty's igloo to have dinner and spend the night there. Unexpectedly, the egg hatches and a baby eagle comes out from it. The next morning, they continue their search for a new house since this one is also not compatible. Daria then takes Letty and his new son to a community property to adopt some parents for the baby. They reach the Regulus Gorge, where they could raise the baby. They reach the first landlord's place named Orthros, a double-headed wolf. They wanted to take in the new kid, but the baby chirps a loud shrill sound that causes the Orthros brothers to get knocked out. They visit the next landlord named Impusa. After looking at the little kid, she agrees to take her in, but after Letty sees that she keeps them in a cage, he pulls back. They later go to Manticore, the third landlord. He happily agrees to adopt him, but Letty rejects after seeing that the Manticore cubs are looking at the chick with murder in their eyes. They continue their journey to find new parents. They find a panther who wants to take him in, but after seeing how strict the panther is regarding the chick's training, fearing that he might get hurt if he lives with him, so Letty takes him back. Daria gets called by a bear who wants to get renovations done in his house, so he accompanies him. Outside, Letty is playing with the bear cubs and the chick, while a catapulpus arrives and tells him to hand over the baby bird so he could sell it for money. Letty rejects his offer, and he rushes towards him to forcefully take the baby. Seeing that the bear cubs and the baby are in trouble, Letty has no choice but to breathe fire. He saves the children, but unfortunately, he burns his tongue in the process. While the catapulpus is shocked to see the fire, Daria arrives and threatens him by mentioning that he is known as the Flame Dragon Lord, which makes him run away in horror. The bear cubs thank Letty for saving them and go back with their father. While they are going back, Letty decides to make the baby his son and names him Pip. The next day, Letty tells Daria that he has no money left to use any property since he has spent it all on Pip. Daria tells Letty not to worry and takes him to the marketplace in the city. As they enter the marketplace, Letty is terrified to see humans and hides behind a basket to save his organs. Daria forces him to get a job, so they look for a job. Daria tells Letty that everyone who commits a crime will be sent to the cage. After that, they go to an Ammon, but without a letter of recommendation. He can't offer him a job or anything. Somehow, Pip convinces Ammon to give Letty a job and compels him to start as soon as possible. Letty gets a job as a lumberman to cut down small box-shaped wood. After he finishes the job, he gets a gold coin as a reward since the work he put in was really shady. After that, he gets a job as a waiter, but that doesn't go well because he keeps getting yelled at. So Daria proposes a job for him that only he could do. They find a proxy job for Letty, where he has to be a summoning beast for a wizard. Letty agrees to do the job, but after seeing how bad their performance was, the other party requests him to show his power. So Pip jumps in and knocks them out. They go back to Ammon, and he gives him another job. In this job, Letty is going to be a test dummy for a spell. Daria sits on the side with Pip and waits for him. While they are waiting, a girl named Lilith arrives and calls Daria the Dark Lord. She also mentions that he has changed a lot since his first day as a demon lord. Daria, intrigued by the questions, remembers the day he became the Dark Lord. In the flashback, we see a lucky draw happening for the role of Dark Lord, hosted by the Dark Lord Association. Daria, seduced by the tissue papers, participates in the game and wins, causing him to become the Demon Lord of the state. But he doesn't want to become the Dark Lord, so he tries to resign from the seat. Unfortunately, he gets abducted by the Dark Lord Association and gets taken to the palace of the Dark Lord. They host a ceremony for the third Dark Lord, but as they present the Lord to the public, he runs away. After many years of rejections, the Dark Lord Association agrees to his conditions and lets him get away with the role. The flashback ends, and Daria tells Lilith that the Dark Lord itself doesn't have any powers. No one has seen him in real life after the peace treaty was signed. He considers it nonsense and loves the real estate business. After their business is done, Daria goes to Letty, and they receive the reward. Letty then takes Pip to the town square to wash himself and get ready to leave since the money he needed has been acquired. While he is washing up, a shopkeeper arrives and tells Letty to deliver something for him in the alleyway. Letty rejects it at first, but after he mentions that he will pay him a lot of money, he agrees to it. As expected, he gets surrounded by guards and gets arrested. They take Letty to an arena and lock him up. After a few moments, Letty tells Pip to go away and save himself from getting turned into cool weapons. Pip refuses to go, so Letty tries to break out but fails miserably. After a few moments, a guy named Steve arrives and tells him to calm down. He also tells him that he can go outside anytime he wants since the doors are unlocked. Steve gives him a tour of the arena and introduces him to the other prisoners. They reach the cell and find all the prisoners hanging out in the cell. Steve tells Letty about all the features this place has, like a state-of-the-art gym, a swimming pool. After the tour, work begins with a fight between the Red Dragon and the Skeleton Bros. The fight ends with Letty winning with only one blow. After the match, Steve explains that all the matches are fixed according to the betting numbers beforehand. This makes the Margraves earn a lot of money, and as a result, all the monsters get star treatment. After the match, Letty goes to see Pip, and he disappears. Seeing that his son has gone missing, Letty searches everywhere and finally finds Pip in the cold storage room. Like this, 10 days have passed and Letty wonders where Diria is. But soon, bad news comes, as the owner of the arena dies and leaves his elder son to take care of the arena. But his son dislikes the arena and orders the arena to be closed along with the monsters. Seeing that the army is outside, they devise a plan to escape. They make two teams, one to escape and the other to distract the soldiers from entering cells. They manage to knock out most of the soldiers, but they get cornered by them since Letty is too scared to hit anyone intentionally. As usual, Diria arrives at the end time and knocks them out using his magic spell. Before leaving, Diria erases the memory of the soldiers and gets out. All of the monsters get ready to depart after stealing all the items from the storage room. They decide what they are going to do after this and decide to start a traveling circus. After this, they bid farewell, and Letty and the others go their separate ways. Diria tells Letty to go along with them since he likes their company. But Letty rejects the offer since he wants his own family along on the journey rather than getting into one. As Letty takes a breather, Pip asks Diria for permission to go inside the forest and explore in a solo quest. Diria, seeing how excited Pip is for this adventure, grants him permission, and he gets on his way. Inside the forest, Pip finds a couple of baby monsters and greets them. After that, he starts looking for a creature who would want his help. After a few moments, Pip encounters a dwarf crying for help and Pip, eager to help, asks him what is wrong. He explains that he needs to find his brother who is lost in the forest. Pip remembers another dwarf he saw a few moments ago and goes to grab him. When they return, they get excited to see each other and further explain the condition to Pip. They tell Pip that their house was destroyed by a hero and afterwards he tossed the shoe in the river. They ask Pip for his assistance in getting a new shoe to build his home. Pip starts searching. After a few moments he finds the hero's team and tells the dwarfs to steal their shoes. They get scared, but with the help of Pip, who uses a group of worms to force the hero's party to evacuate. The sudden evacuation causes the heroes to lose a shoe or two on the ground. This makes the dwarf brothers get a new home and Pip successfully completes his first quest. On his way back, Pip sees Letty looking for him while he considers that he might have gotten eaten. But Diria relieves him, saying that Pip is perfectly fine and healthy. Even so, Letty tells Pip to never go away like this again and scold him. They get ready to eat. At that moment, Letty suddenly remembers that Diria has a past since he is an elf. Intrigued by this, Letty asks Diria to tell his childhood story and how he got into the construction business. Diria tries to tackle the question at first but falls victim to Letty's baby face and starts his story. In the flashback, young Diria is shown surrounded by books. He mentions that he lives in the Tree of Yggdrasil, the territory of elves. The sacred land is only accessible to elves. He further explains that he was taken under by the elfin elders. He explains that the love for reading has made him very interested and he constantly wants to learn more. He spent all his day buried inside books. One time Diria tried to make a home inside the trees to study all day. While performing the spell, he caused an explosion and made all the elders angry. They scold him for being reckless and tell him to play with the other children. But seeing that all the other children make fun of him, he tells them that he likes his own company rather than others. Seeing that Diria is such a handful, they sent Diria to the wise and enchanted white servant living in the land of Thundra. Diria, not knowing who or what creature the white servant is, goes to the location and finds her. The white serpent arrives and introduces her to Diria, and tells Diria to call her by the name of Jormungandr. Diria, intrigued by her presence, starts asking her weird questions like what the golem's shit is made out of. Jormungandr gets confused and impressed by his questions and tells him that he is unique. But before she answers any of Diria's questions, Jormungandr tells him that he first needs to get him a cozy home. Diria becomes Jormungandr's disciple and starts his journey to seek immense knowledge. Dirya learns many things like biology, language, and many other endeavors. While taking wood to his house, Dirya sees that his house has been destroyed by an earthquake. Shocked to see that even thunder can get affected by this climate, Dirya finds out that Jormungandr was the one who crushed it because her movement is unpredictable. Dirya mentions that this is the third time this house was crushed. Feeling intimidated, Dirya asks his master to resurrect him every day because he will sleep outside. Jormungandr rejects his wishes and mentions that they are wandering berserkers in tundra and he might get killed. Fearing that, she asks Dirya to be sent back to the elf's place if he wants to. Dirya gets scared and tells Jormungandr that he will find a way to make his house stronger. He begins his construction journey the next day. He makes a wall around the wall with the help of the golems with wood to keep it steady. They think that it will work, but after 3 days the whole place gets destroyed and Dirya starts from scratch again. He proposed the idea to make metal beams to make the house stronger, but the super low temperature of tundra causes the steel to become hard and sticky, causing it to break. After many trial and errors, Dirya finally succeeds in making his house with both strong interior and exterior. He calls Jormungandr to see his new home. As she turns around to check, she squishes the house and feels extremely sorry for Dirya's house. Dirya becomes depressed as how could it even happen. At that moment, the sisters arrive and tell little Dirya to go back to the tree and resume his life there. Dirya rejects the offer by mentioning that they will make fun of him for coming back in such a short time. He also mentions that he wants to stay with Jormungandr since she is more fun to be with. Seeing this, the grannies tell Dirya that they will help him with building the perfect home. So, after putting a lot of effort, he manages to create a perfect home on Jormungandr's head and resumes his journey. After many years of training, Dirya comes across a giant black dragon. This dragon introduces himself as Bonnie and calls himself the Black Dragon. Seeing his faint reaction, Bonnie looks at him to make sure if he really is the Dark Lord and not someone else. He takes out a photo of a poorly sketched Dirya and takes a wild guess. Dirya remembers that Bonnie is the legendary dragon with a bounty of over 1 million gold coins on his head. After making sure that he is the real Dark Lord, Bonnie asks him that he needs to find himself a new home and he wants his help in order to do it. Dirya, not having any experience in real estate, rejects his offer. After hearing his response, Bonnie flips him off and tells him that he will force Dirya to help him. He starts throwing a tantrum which makes Jormungandr enter their conversation. She makes Dirya agree to this and tells Bonnie to take care of him since he has much to learn. Bonnie promises to keep Dirya under his care, and they get ready to leave. They arrive at the hero's fortress and Bonnie tells Dirya that he will take this house for himself. After seeing that Bonnie has made up his mind to find a home, he leaves and considers this quest complete. But he is stopped midway. Bonnie tells him if he leaves he will tell his master about this and blackmails him. After being called a lot of indecent things, Dirya returns and tells Bonnie that he will help him. In return, he will tell Dirya what these insults really mean. They break down the main door and enter the fortress. After taking over the fortress with the help of Dirya, Bonnie tells Dirya that he wants to see a beach house next since the flooring is not etiquette for his caliber. After trying out many properties, they take a breather in the forest, where a terrible tragedy occurs. The next day, Bonnie gets angry seeing the newspaper that the Dark Lord has destroyed the Fortress of Heroes. Bonnie gets angry seeing that only Dirya is the one being mentioned in the paper, not him. After fighting for a while, Dirya and Bonnie go to the Heroes Guilds to test out other properties for Bonnie to see what material will be best for him. After arriving at the Heroes Guild, Bonnie makes the whole wall crumble by just using his wall. After getting discouraged by the build quality, they leave for the next guild. They go to many fortresses and castles, but they get destroyed with a single sweep. Seeing this, Dirya tells him that he can't live in any establishment made by humans. So, he tells Bonnie to make a new home by hiring dwarfs. Seeing that Dirya doesn't have knowledge about any of this, he tells him that dwarfs hate dragons and rejects the offer. After a few moments, Bonnie notices a hero guild in the middle of the forest. Intrigued by the sudden appearance, they fly towards it to check out that establishment as well. They break inside the guild and tell Dirya to assist him. Dirya loses his temper and they start arguing. While they are arguing, the humans try to attack them, so they destroy the place for their insolence. While they fight, Bonnie asks Dirya about who he wants in this world and who he cares about the most. Hearing this, Dirya considers asking Bonnie why he is looking for a home. Bonnie replies that he wants to start a family. Every time he finds a new home, the heroes arrive and it gets destroyed in the process. Dirya points out that Bonnie wants a home to get some alone time with the ladies. After their conversion, Bonnie Dragon, he tells him that he will use Dirya to be a successor since he is the Black Dragon. They resume their journey for 100 years. The flashback ends as Diria tells Letty that he will tell him the remaining story afterwards. On the other side, we are shown the adventurer who stole Letty's egg. He wants to hunt down the red dragon so he could eat his meat. Even so, this hero wants to explore his species since it might be a new kind of dragon. After searching for days, he comes across Letty's mansion. He hears the tales of the flame dragon Lord Letty on the journey to take over the whole world. This news makes the adventurer even more interested in Letty as he continues his search. The adventurer finds Letty in the mountains and finds him mercilessly killing all the passengers with his scorching hot flames. This makes him fear the Dragon Lord as he runs away. On their way, Diria was the one who used flame magic to kill them as Letty stood on the side in shock. Letty tells Diria that he is ruthless, but he tells him that he only killed the passengers, not the animals, and they resume their journey. One of the carriages reveals a human girl seemingly kidnapped by bandits. Upon seeing the girl, Diria congratulates Letty for being of 2 and pisses off Letty. When she wakes up, she becomes frightened of Letty and panics, thinking he's the one who abducted her. However, Diria reassures her that Letty was the one who saved her after ensuring that she's alright. She introduces herself as the princess of the people from the city of Yos. She admits to running away from home because her father ate her cupcake without permission, and now she desires a home of her own. Diria, the elf who never backs down from a challenge, accepts her request. Letty gets ready to take her to a location, but she can't seem to find a place that meets her standards, especially in terms of having the perfect bath. At the last place they visit, she falls into a large body of water while expressing her dissatisfaction with the places Diria has shown her. Letty attempts to save her, but they both end up falling into the water, leaving Diria to rescue them later. In the end, he makes a bandage for her in a pot, and despite initial misgivings, she is grateful to him for helping them. While she takes the bath, Nell opens up to Letty and mentions the whole scenario regarding her father eating her cupcake without permission. This story makes Letty question the royals' way of thinking. Their sweet moment is short-lived when heroes appear and mistake Letty for having kidnapped the princess. Letty tries to reason with them, but they won't listen, so Diria intervenes, resolving the situation. The three of them enjoy a meal together and call it a night. The next morning, Letty gets a visit from the djinn and faints when he sees him. He introduces himself to Letty and tells him that when an elite dragon becomes independent, they have to pay income tax to the government. In the morning, Letty struggles to decide his next course of action, particularly regarding a tax service office related to Letty's tax reform. Jin takes him to the office to help him file his taxes, but Letty has no income or household, except for the one house he built, which now incurs significant expenses. He gets even more depressed when the Jin tells him that Letty is unemployed and homeless. Jin also mentions that he can apply for child support. Since Letty is a father of 2, he can get a good amount of cash for them. Letty explains that he has only one son, Pip. Jin then mentions that Letty must be saving Nell for dinner, and they continue. Even his stats are quite poor. After showing his stats card to Jin, Nell gets intrigued and asks Letty to show him his stats. After forcefully getting the card, Nell finds out how poor his stats are and tells him he is worthless. To make matters worse, Pip asks to see his father's stats. After seeing what terrible stats Letty has, Nell lies to Pip and runs away. Jin offers him an application for a child grant to support Pip, their next step in the search for housing. They arrive at the governmental dungeon of imitation, a place where heroes train and non-human servants reside. It's the last place Letty would want to live. Their objective is to find the treasure that Nell's father lied to her about. In the dungeon, Nell asks Diria about the mimics and fake chests that she can see in the dungeons. But Diria pops her balloons and tells her that all of that is a lie and they are hired by the dungeon lords to make an impression. Seeing her life was all a lie, Nell gets depressed. Letty cheers her up and tells that she can get a mimic as a house gift for Nell to see and turns the point around. While separated from Diria, Letty and Pip accidentally get trapped in a room with shifting walls. While solving a trap, Letty and Nell quickly discover a secret door with a ladder leading to the above-ground living area of the palace. Nell sees this and tells them that this is the last place she wants to be. Letty, now outside, is discovered by the royal guards and pursued, though he's doing this to protect his friends from harm. He devises a plan to escape the palace and distracts the guards and gets down from the roof. Later that night, Diria proposes a plan to stop them from coming, and since the only entrance to the palace is through a bridge, he rallies the gnomes to throw rocks at the guards. The battle continues, but Letty and his group run out of ideas as the gnomes leave after work. The king speaks with Letty, urging him to return to his daughter who he loves and cherishes. Nell remembers that running away from home over a cupcake is unwise. The princess decides to head back inside. Her Her problem is resolved, but Letty must find a way to leave. He comes up with a plan and asks for the area's help. He appears where the king is, convincing him to leave the guards and enter a room secured by Diria's magic. In order to do that, he uses himself as bait and makes the king follow him to an empty room. When he enters the room, Diria shuts the doors and puts a magic spell on it to block the outsiders. The king discovers his daughter inside, and they reconcile. Meanwhile, Letty is on the corner looking at them. The king, now understanding the situation, becomes more composed. When he sees Letty, he charges towards him but gets stopped by Nell, who tells him that he was the one who saved him. Letty asks to leave, but since the guards are outside and unaware that he's not the villain, he can't exit from the front. The king gives him a bottle of pixie dust that allows him to fly. Nell and the others get ready to leave, but seeing that all of this was Nell's fault, the king grabs her and tells her that she can only leave after she resolves this mess. The king provides a solution, and when Letty tries his best, it works. He flies out the window with Pip and Diria, bidding farewell to the king and Nell. Nell gives Letty a special half rock that lets them track each other's location. Nell promises to Letty that after she clears this mess, she will come meet again. She also tells Letty to find his dream home till then. So, Diria, Letty and Pip are continuing their journey to find a home. Like this video and subscribe.